Sometimes in your Army career, you'll come across this really strong feeling that's very hard to shake off. It's the fear of missing out, or FOMO. At the same time, you find yourself in a crossroads to decide whether you want to stay in, re-enlist, or get out of the military. And it happens more than you think. It definitely happened to me and still happens to me today after 16 years of service. I don't know if you've seen this TV show from Disney, Loki. Anyway, in this TV show, they talk about the sacred timeline, and within that timeline, you'll have branches of time called the variants. And basically, it's a different version of you if you were to decide different from what your main timeline was. And I'm sure you get the idea. And this normally happens when you're driving to work or on a vacation. You get to think about your life and what are the other alternative universes that exist out there if you were to get out and not serve longer than what you're serving right now, or if you had gotten out years ago. That's where the fear of missing out really happens. In my opinion, the best time to get out of the military is after your first term, which is anywhere from 3 to 4 years. In some cases, is 5 years. Because at that point, you just gotten the full benefits of your enlistment for your education. Because if you were to get out, you can literally have a pathway to go to college full-time to get your degree. But the best part is you get basic allowance for housing, which is really amazing. You don't have to worry about how you're going to pay for rent and books and living situation while you're full-time in college. So that's great after 4 years. And another one is your VA home loan. So if you have a family, you already got a degree, and you're one of the lucky ones to land in a career immediately after your first term, you literally can uproot wherever you want or where that job takes you, and your family can stay there in place and create lives for your own. And the best part is you can buy a home for zero down. If you do decide to stay longer than your first term, that's where everything gets very complicated. Fear of missing out will happen throughout your career, but there are some checkpoints that it happens more often. The next checkpoint is your mid-career, anywhere from 9 to 10 years. Back in the day, you're indefinite after 10 years. Now it's 12 years you're indefinite in the Army, so which means you're enlisted indefinitely. The reason why that becomes very important to understand and be mindful about, because at 10-year mark, it's harder to make the decision to get out. Because at this point, you invested a decade of your life in the military service already, and those things are important because if you make a decision to get out, you won't get anything as far as your retirement. You may get medical or VA benefits from that, but nearly not enough to be able to sustain a lifestyle. If you're lucky and you have a plan in place, an employer or a business idea or a franchise of McDonald's, that decision is such a hard decision to make. And then what makes it harder is at this point, more than likely, you'll have a family of your own, you have a wife and kids. That makes everything else a lot more complicated. Simply because of one thing that happens every 3 years is the PCS, or permanently change of station. It's hard for your family. It's already hard for you, but multiply that so many times over. That's how hard it is for your spouse and your kids. Let me put this into perspective. Your spouse at that moment, let's say they have a job and they love the job and it's not remote. They have to physically go into the office. Or even what if they started a business? Then you come down in orders to go somewhere else completely far away from that area. Imagine the devastation that it will create on your family. They will resent you, trust me on this. And if they decide to pack up and leave with you, imagine the sacrifice that they're about to make to quit their job find another job somewhere else. The friends that they've made, they'll have to leave them all behind and start new ones in a different place. The emotional stress and financial, it's so devastating that some soldiers decide to leave their family behind and just PCS themselves, and we call them geo-bachelors. And I definitely do not recommend that. And that's just your spouse. If you have kids, especially if they're teenagers, at this point they have their lives already grounded on that location. Some of them have boyfriends or girlfriends or best friends. Imagine taking them away and moving them somewhere else. And for most service members, that's probably the most challenging piece when it's time to PCS. So in my opinion, that 10-year mark is probably the hardest decision you'll ever make. And then let's say your entire family came together, stayed strong, and moved somewhere else, and you're able to stay and continue with your career. Because remember, your spouse cannot sustain a career at this point. The sacrifice that they give is tremendous for you to be able to serve in the military. At this point, you will have a career goal because you're already there for the long haul. You're gonna be a lifer. You're gonna stay at least 20 years. It's stupid not to at that point. Now you gotta look at the next few years. You would think it's gonna get easier because of your rank and you get paid more. No, it's gonna get harder for your family, because think of it this way. At 10-year mark, you're probably a staff sergeant or a sergeant first class. If you're a staff sergeant, you gotta wait at least 4 years as a staff sergeant to get eligible to pin for sergeant first class. But if you're a sergeant first class, it's about 24 months. Then you get evaluated to make master sergeant or first sergeant. And if you're a first sergeant and you got promoted on that calendar year before October 1st, you're getting looked at right away after 13 or 14 months to go to the academy. And this is important to understand because the cycle of PCS, the amount of PCS move that's about to happen, that's gonna devastate your family. Sergeant first class, E7, you're gonna PCS to be a first sergeant. When you're a first sergeant, you're probably gonna do that for about 2-3 years. So let's say you have to move one time between those two ranks. That's one PCS. And you're at 10 years, that puts you at 13-ish. And then you become a first sergeant. 13 months later, you get picked up for the academy. Then you PCS again to the academy. And the academy is 1 year PCS. So you're there for a year, leave everything behind, go to Texas for 1 entire year. That's it. And after that 1 year, then you move again to take over an E9 position, maybe an operations sergeant major or whatever your branch is, you'll have that E9 position. And then you do that for me and my MOS, they serve as an operations sergeant major for maybe a year and a half or 2 years, and then they take over a battalion. That's another PCS. And then from there, maybe you're gonna retire. You're talking about 3 to 4 moves. Again, saying all that just to say this, career goal is great, but you gotta look at what sacrifices are necessary to be able to get to that career goal that you're shooting for or you're aiming for. Those are the things that you want to consider. Not everybody's talking about it, and I think it's important to share. And lastly, when you get to that E9 position, you're at, let's say, 20 years. Here's another big problem. The Army's designed the E9 to really stay longer than 20 years, maybe 25 to 30 years, because when you get to that rank, there's different positions that the Army has filled and different levels of echelons. You got battalions and brigades and division level, and all those are E9. And I want you to keep that in mind, because at, let's say, 20-year mark, you get to that battalion level position. Almost a lot of people that I know at least retire on that battalion level position. And I don't blame them, because at that point, there's not a whole lot of incentive to stay in the Army besides the love for your country or your service. And in some cases, that's not enough, because I'm gonna say this, and this is important to understand. I am a man first, I am a husband first, I am a father first before anything else. Yes, I love the Army, but every decision I have to make has to have my family in the core of it, because they already sacrificed so much for me to be able to serve, continue serving in the Army. When it comes to retirement, you automatically get 50% of it. Unless you get blended retirement, you get lower than that. I think it was 40, but every year you serve after that, you get more percentage. But let's just say at 20 years, you got 50% retirement guaranteed. And let's assume, just for math purposes, it's easy for me to do it. Let's say your base military pay is $6,000 a month. That's just your base pay. 50% is $3,000. Now, because of the wear and tear on your body, because of your service, you get VA disability rating, right? Let's say medical stuff. Easy math, let's say $1,000. So the total is $4,000 a month just by doing nothing, just by retiring. In most cases, since the military are built for younger individuals, it means at 20, you're typically anywhere from late 30s to early 40s when you get out, which is very young. And it's a prime candidate for great employment in the civilian sector. And after 20 years of service, your resume looks really great, and years of leadership experience makes you very, very competitive in the civilian workforce. So take that $4,000 a month plus your new income, new career, you're basically almost double dipping. You're gonna make more money in the civilian world after 20 years of service, with all things considered. If you stay in the Army longer, after 20, in some cases, you're probably going to leave money on the table. So that's why you'll see a surge of E9s retiring at 20, 21, or 22 years, because there's no incentive any longer for them to stay in. They're basically losing money every year. And you can't blame them for that. And you can't take it against them if they decide to pursue other financial opportunities for their family, because they already gave 2 decades of their lives. I know that's some heavy shit that I just dropped right now. But these are the things you got to look at, not just the initial service, but all the way down to 20 years and then some in a different ranks, because you will feel that fear of missing out, because it's real. You know what's tough about it? You only retire once. It's not like you've done it before, so you know how to do it. You only retire once. That being said, we're always going to be an FNG. Thanks for watching. Hope I earned your subscription, and I'll catch you in the next video.